Windows XP is a personal computer operating system produced by Microsoft as part of Windows NT family of operating systems. The operating system was released to manufacturing on August 24, 2001, and generally released for retail sale on October 25, 2001. Development of XP began in the late 1990s as Neptune, an operating system built on the Windows NT kernel which was intended specifically for mainstream consumer use. An updated version of Windows 2000 was also originally planned for the business market. However, in January 2000, both projects were shelved in favor of a single OS code named Whistler, which would serve as a single OS platform for both consumer and business markets. Windows XP was a major advance from the MS-DOS-based versions of Windows in security, stability and efficiency due to its use of Windows NT underpinnings. It introduced a significantly redesigned graphical user interface and was the first version of Windows to use product activation in an effort to reduce software piracy. Upon its release, Windows XP received generally positive reviews with critics noting increased performance, a more intuitive user interface, improved hardware support, and its expanded multimedia capabilities. Despite poor initial public reception, often centered on driver support and security restrictions, Windows XP eventually proved to be popular and widely used. It was estimated that at least 400 million copies of Windows XP were sold globally within its first 5 years of availability, and at least 1 billion copies were sold overall by April 2014. Windows XP remained popular even after the release of newer versions, particularly due to the poorly received release of its successor Windows Vista. While Windows 7 was released as a follow-up in 2009, it only overtook XP in total market share by the end of 2011. Sales of Windows XP licenses to OEMs ceased on June 30, 2008, but continued for netbooks until October 2010. Extended support for Windows XP ended on April 8, 2014, meaning that the operating system is now end of life, and new security updates or support information will no longer be provided for free. Due to the still widespread choice of XP, Microsoft and others began to actively encourage remaining users to migrate to newer versions due to the potential security risks of continued use. The looming end of support was a cause for concern among companies and governments due to the large contingents of XP users in several market segments, including enterprise environments, and in China, where there were fears that the end of support would fuel piracy of newer Windows versions. Development. As Neptune, in the late 1990s, initial development of what would become Windows XP was focused on two individual products. Odyssey, which was reportedly intended to succeed Windows 2000, and Neptune, which was intended to succeed the MIST OS-based Windows 98 with a Windows NT-based product designed for consumers. Based on 2000's NT 5.0 kernel, Neptune primarily focused on offering a simplified, task-based interface based around a concept known internally as activity centers. A number of activity centers were planned, serving as hubs for communications, playing music, managing or viewing photos, searching the Internet, and viewing recently used content. A single build of Neptune, 5111, revealed early work on the activity center concept, with an updated user account interface and graphical login screen, common functions being accessible from a customizable starting places page. However, the project, at its current state, proved to be too ambitious. Microsoft would ultimately shelve Bill Gates' 1998 promise that Windows 98 would be the final MS-DOS-based version of Windows. At the WinHEC conference on April 7, 1999, Steve Ballmer announced an updated version of 98 known as Windows Millennium. Microsoft also planned to push back Neptune in favor of an interim, but consumer-oriented NT-based OS code named Asteroid. Concepts introduced by Neptune would influence future Windows products. In Windows ME, the Activity Center concept was used for system restore and help and support. The hub concept would be expanded on Windows Phone, and Windows 8 would similarly use a simplified user interface running atop the existing Windows shell. As Whistler, in January 2000, shortly after the release of Windows 2000, technology writer Paul Thurrott reported that Microsoft had shelved both Neptune and Odyssey in favor of a new product codenamed Whistler, after Whistler, British Columbia, as many Microsoft employees skied at the Whistler Blackcomb Ski Resort. The goal of Whistler was to unify both the consumer and business-oriented Windows lines under a single, Windows NT platform, further stating that Neptune became a black hole when all the features that were cut from Windows ME were simply retagged as Neptune features. And since Neptune and Odyssey would be based on the same codebase anyway, it made sense to combine them into a single project. At WinHEC in April 2000, Microsoft officially announced and presented an early build of Whistler, focusing on a new modularized architecture, built-in CD burning, fast user switching, and updated versions of the digital media features introduced by ME. Windows General Manager Carl Stork stated that Whistler would be released in both consumer and business-oriented versions built atop the same architecture, and that there were plans to update the Windows interface to make it warmer and more friendly. In June 2000, Microsoft began the technical beta testing process. Whistler was expected to be made available in personal, professional, server, advanced server, and data center editions. At PDC on July 13, 2000, Microsoft announced that Whistler would be released during the second half of 2001, and also released the first preview build, 2250. The build notably introduced an early version of a new visual style system along with an interim theme known as Professional, and contained a hidden start page, and a hidden, early version of a two-column start menu design. Build 2257 featured further refinements to the watercolor theme, along with the official introduction of the two-column start menu, and the addition of an early version of Windows Firewall. Beta releases: Microsoft released Whistler Beta 1, Build 2296, on October 31, 2000. Build 2410 in January 2001 introduced Internet Explorer 6.0 and the Windows Product Activation System. Bill Gates dedicated a portion of his keynote at Consumer Electronics Show to discuss Whistler, explaining that the OS would bring the dependability of our highest-end corporate desktop, and total dependability, to the home, but also move it in the direction of making it very consumer-oriented, making it very friendly for the home user to use. Alongside Beta 1, it was also announced that Microsoft would prioritize the release of the consumer-oriented versions of Whistler over the server-oriented versions in order to gauge reaction, but that they would be both generally available during the second half of 2001. Builds 2416 and 2419 added the file and transfer settings wizard and began to introduce elements of the operating system's final appearance. On February 5, 2001, Microsoft officially announced that Whistler would be known as Windows XP, short for Experience. As a complement, the next version of Microsoft Office was also announced as Office XP. Microsoft stated that the name symbolizes the rich and extended user experiences Windows and Office can offer by embracing web services that span a broad range of devices. In a press event at IMC Museum in Seattle on February 13, 2001, Microsoft publicly unveiled the new Lunar user interface of Windows XP. Windows XP Beta 2, Build 2462, was launched at WinHEC on March 25, 2001. In April 2001, Microsoft controversially announced that XP would not integrate support for Bluetooth or USB 2.0 on launch, requiring the use of third-party drivers. Critics felt that in the case of the latter, Microsoft's decision had delivered a potential blow to the adoption of USB 2.0, as XP was to provide support for the competing, Apple-developed FireWire standard instead. A representative stated that the company had recognized the importance of USB 2.0 as a newly emerging standard and is evaluating the best mechanism for making it available to Windows XP users after the initial release. For builds prior to and following Release Candidate 1, released on July 5, 2001, and Release Candidate 2, focused on fixing bugs, acknowledging user feedback, and other final tweaks before the RTM build. RTM and release. On August 24, 2001, Windows XP Build 2600 was released to manufacturing. During a ceremonial media event at Microsoft Redmond campus, copies of the RTM build were given to representatives of several major PC manufacturers in briefcases, who then flew off on XP-branded helicopters. While PC manufacturers would be able to release devices running XP beginning on September 24, 2001, XP was expected to reach general, retail availability on October 25, 2001. On the same day, Microsoft also announced the final retail pricing of XP's two main editions, Home and Professional. In June 2001, Microsoft indicated that it was planning to, in conjunction with Intel and other PC makers, spend at least $1 billion on marketing and promoting Windows XP. New and updated features. User interface. While retaining some similarities to previous versions, Windows XP's interface was overhauled with a new visual appearance, with an increased use of alpha compositing effects, drop shadows, and visual styles, which completely changed the appearance of the operating system. The amount of effects enabled are determined by the operating system by the computer's processing power, and can be enabled or disabled on a case-by-case basis. XP also added Cleartype, a new subpixel rendering system designed to improve the appearance of fonts on LCD displays. A new set of system icons were also introduced. The default wallpaper, Bliss, is a photo of a landscape in the Napa Valley outside Napa, California, with rolling green hills and a blue sky with stratocumulus and cirrus clouds. The Start menu received its first major overhaul on XP, switching to a two-column layout with the ability to list, pin and display frequently used applications, recently opened documents, and the traditional cascading all programs menu. The taskbar can now group windows opened by a single application into one taskbar button, with a pop-up menu listing the individual windows. The notification area also hides inactive icons by default. The taskbar can also be locked to prevent accidental moving or other changes. A common tasks list was added. Windows Explorer's sidebar was updated to use a new task-based designs with lists of common actions. The tasks displayed are contextually relevant to the type of content in a folder. Fast user switching allows additional users to log into a Windows XP machine without existing users having to close their programs and logging out. Although only one user at the time can use the console, previous users can resume their session once they regained control of the console. Infrastructure. In an effort to prevent software piracy, XP also introduced Windows Product Activation, which requires that each Windows license be activated, and tied to a unique ID generated using information from the computer hardware. Windows XP uses Prefetcher to improve startup and application launch times. It also became possible to revert the installation of an updated device driver, should one not produce desirable results. Numerous improvements were also made to system administration tools such as Windows Installer, Windows Script Host, Disk Defragmenter, Windows Task Manager, Group Policy, CHKDSK, Backup, Microsoft Management Console, Shadow Copy, Registry Editor, Sysgrep and WMI. Networking and Internet functionality. Windows XP was originally bundled with Internet Explorer 6, Outlook Express 6, Windows Messenger, and MSN Explorer. New networking features were also added to XP, including Internet Connection Firewall, Internet Connection Sharing integration with UPnP, NAT Traversal APIs, Quality of Service features, IPv6 and Teredo tunneling, Background Intelligent Transfer Service, Extended Fax features, Network Bridging, Peer-to-peer networking, support for most DSL modems, IEEE 802.11 connections with auto-configuration and roaming, TAPI 3.1, and networking over FireWire. Remote assistance and remote desktop were also added, which allow users to connect to a computer running Windows XP from across a network or the Internet and access their applications, files, printers, and devices or request help. Improvements were also made to anti-mirror features such as offline files, roaming user profiles and folder redirection. Other features: DirectX 8.1 upgradable to DirectX 9.0c, a number of new features in Windows Explorer including task panes, tiles and film strip views, improved sorting and grouping, searching by document categories, customizable info tips, built-in CD burning, autoplay, simple file sharing and WebDAV mini redirector. Improved imaging features such as Windows Picture and Fax Viewer, improved image handling and thumbnail caching in Explorer, a number of kernel enhancements and power management improvements, faster startup, log-on, log-off, hibernation and application launch sequences. Numerous improvements to increase the system reliability such as improved system restore, automated system recovery, Windows error reporting and driver reliability. Hardware support improvements such as USB 2.0, FireWire 800, Windows Image Acquisition, Media Transfer Protocol, Dual View for multi-monitors and audio improvements. Fast user switching, the Cleartype font rendering mechanism, which is designed to improve text readability on liquid crystal display and similar monitors, especially laptops. Side-by-side assemblies and registration-free COM, improved media features in Windows Media Format Runtime, Windows Media Player, Windows Movie Maker, TV video capture and playback technologies, Windows Media Encoder and introduction of Windows Media Center, general improvements to international support such as more locales, languages and scripts, MUI support in terminal services, improved IMEs and national language support, text services framework, improved application compatibility and shims compared to Windows 2000, updated accessories and games. Users in British schools observed the improved ease of use and advanced capabilities comparing the former to RISC OS and Mac OS, and the latter to Unix. Removed features. Some of the programs and features that were part of the previous versions of Windows did not make it to Windows XP CD player, DVD player and imaging for Windows are removed as Windows Picture and Fax Viewer, Windows Media Player and Windows Shell take over their duties. NetBay and NetDDE are deprecated and are not installed by default. DLC and Apple Talk Network protocols are removed. Plug-and-play Euro-incompatible communication devices are no longer supported. Service Pack 2 and Service Pack 3 also remove features from Windows XP but to a less noticeable extent. For instance, Program Manager and support for TCP half-open connections are removed in Service Pack 2. Energy Star logo and the address bar on Taskbar are removed in Service Pack 3. Editions. Windows XP was released in two major editions on launch: Home Edition, and Professional. Both editions were made available at retail as pre-loaded software on new computers, and in boxed copies. Boxed copies were sold as upgrade, or full licenses. The upgrade versions were slightly cheaper, but require an existing version of Windows to install. The full version could be installed on systems without an operating system or existing version of Windows. Both versions of XP were aimed towards different markets. Home Edition is explicitly intended for consumer use and disables or removes certain advanced and enterprise-oriented features present on Professional, such as the ability to join a Windows domain, Internet Information Services, and multilingual user interface. Additionally, users could not directly upgrade to XP Home Edition from Windows NT 4.0 or 2000, although users could upgrade to either variant of XP from Windows 98 or ME. Windows Software License Agreement for preloaded licenses allows the software to be returned to the OEM for a refund if the user does not wish to use it. Despite the refusal of some manufacturers to honor the entitlement, it has been enforced by courts in some countries. Two specialized variants of XP were introduced in 2002 for certain types of hardware, exclusively through OEM channels as preloaded software. Windows XP Media Center Edition was initially designed for high-end home theater PCs with TV tuners, offering expanded multimedia functionality, an electronic program guide, and digital video recorder support through the Windows Media Center application. Microsoft also unveiled Windows XP Tablet PC Edition, which contains additional pen input features, and is optimized for mobile devices meeting its tablet PC specifications. two different 64-bit editions of XP were made available. The first, Windows XP 64-bit edition, was intended for IA-64 systems. As IA-64 usage declined on workstations in favor of AMD's x86-64 architecture, the Itanium version was discontinued in 2005. Microsoft also targeted emerging markets with the 2004 introduction of Windows XP Starter Edition, a special variant of Home Edition intended for low-cost PCs. The OS is primarily aimed at first-time computer owners, containing heavy localization, and a My Support area which contains video tutorials on basic computing tasks. It also removes certain complex features, and does not allow users to run more than 3 applications at a time. After a pilot program in India and Thailand, Starter was released in other emerging markets throughout 2005. In 2006, Microsoft also unveiled the Flexco Initiative, which would also target emerging markets with subsidized PCs on a prepaid, subscription basis. As the result of unfair competition lawsuits in Europe and South Korea, which both alleged that Microsoft had improperly leveraged its status in the PC market to favor its own software, Microsoft was forced to release special versions of XP in these markets that excluded certain applications. In March 2004, after the European Commission fined Microsoft to $497 million, Microsoft was forced to release own versions of XP that excluded Windows Media Player, encouraging users to pick and download their own media player software. As it is sold at the same price as the version with Windows Media Player included, certain OEMs chose not to offer it. Consumer interest has been low, with roughly 1,500 units shipped to OEMs, and no reported sales to consumers. In December 2005, the Korean Fair Trade Commission ordered Microsoft to make available editions of Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 that do not contain Windows Media Player or Windows Messenger. The K and KN editions of Windows XP were released in August 2006, and are only available in English and Korean, and also contain links to third-party instant messenger and media player software. Service packs. 3 service packs were released for Windows XP, containing various bug fixes and the addition of certain features. Each service pack is a superset of all previous service packs and patches so that only the latest service pack needs to be installed, and also includes new revisions. Service Pack 1. Service Pack 1 for Windows XP was released on September 9, 2002. It contained over 300 minor, post-RTM bug fixes, along with all security patches released since the original release of XP-SP1. Also added USB 2.0 support, Microsoft Java Virtual Machine, .NET Framework support, and support for technologies used by the then upcoming Media Center and tablet PC editions of XP. The most significant change on SP1 was the addition of Set Program Access and Defaults, a settings page which allows users and OEMs to set default programs for certain types of activities and disable access to bundled, Microsoft programs. This was added as part of the company's settlement in United States v. Microsoft Corporation, which stated that Microsoft would allow users to enable or remove access to each Microsoft middleware product or non-Microsoft middleware product by displaying or removing icons, shortcuts, or menu entries on the desktop or start menu, or anywhere else in a Windows operating system product where a list of icons, shortcuts, or menu entries for applications are generally displayed. On February 3, 2003, Microsoft released Service Pack 1A. This release removed Microsoft Java Virtual Machine as a result of a lawsuit with Sun Microsystems. Service Pack 2. Service Pack 2 was released on August 25, 2004. SP2 added new functionality to Windows XP, such as WPA encryption compatibility and improved Wi-Fi support, a pop-up ad blocker for Internet Explorer 6, and partial Bluetooth support. Service Pack 2 also added new security enhancements, which included a major revision to the included firewall, data execution prevention, gained hardware support in the NX bit that can stop some forms of buffer overflow attacks. Also RA socket support is removed. Additionally, security-related improvements were made to email and web browsing. Service Pack 2 also added Security Center, an interface which provides a general overview of the system's security status, including the state of the firewall and automatic updates. Third-party firewall and antivirus software can also be monitored from Security Center. In August 2006, Microsoft released updated installation media for Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 SP2 to contain a patch that requires ActiveX controls to require manual activation in accordance with a patent held by EOLAs. Microsoft has since licensed the patent, and released a patch reverting the change in April 2008. In September 2007, another minor revision known as SP2C was released for XP Professional, extending the number of available product keys for the operating system to support the continued availability of Windows XP Professional through the scheduled System Builder Channel end-of-life date of January 31, 2009. Service Pack 3, Windows XP Service Pack 3 was released to manufacturing on April 21, 2008, and to the public via both the Microsoft Download Center and Windows Update on May 6, 2008. It began being automatically pushed out to automatic update users on July 10, 2008. A feature set overview which details new features available separately as standalone updates to Windows XP, as well as backported features from Windows Vista, has been posted by Microsoft. A total of 1,174 fixes have been included in SP3. Service Pack 3 can be installed on systems with Internet Explorer version 6, 7, or 8. Internet Explorer 7 and 8 are not included as part of SP3. Service Pack 3 is not available for the 64-bit version of Windows XP, which is based on Windows Server 2003 kernel. New features in Service Pack 3, NX APIs for application developers to enable data execution prevention for their code, independent of system-wide compatibility enforcement settings. Turns black hole router detection on by default, support for SHA-2 signatures in X509 certificates, network access protection client, group policy support for IEEE 800 2.1x authentication for wired network adapters. Credential security support provider, descriptive security options in group policy local security policy user interface. An updated version of the Microsoft Enhanced Cryptographic Provider module that is FIPS 140-2 certified, installing without requiring a product key during setup for retail and OEM versions. Previously released updates. Service Pack 3 also incorporated several previously released key updates for Windows XP, which were not included up to SP2, including Windows Imaging Component. IPsec Simple Policy Update for simplified creation and maintenance of IPsec filters, Background Intelligent Transfer Service 2.5, MSXML 6.0 SP2. And XMLite, Microsoft Management Console 3.0, Credential Roaming Service Update, Remote Desktop Protocol 6.1 including support for Cleartype and 32-bit color depth over RDP, Remote APP Server which is used for Windows XP mode. Credential Security Support Provider which provides network-level authentication and single sign-on for RDP, Peer Name Resolution Protocol 2.1, Network Diagnostics Update, WPA2 Update, Windows Script 5.7, Windows Installer 3.1 v2, Wireless LAN API, improvements made to Windows Management Instrumentation in Windows Vista to reduce the possibility of corruption of the WMI. Repository. Service Pack 3 contains updates to the operating system components of Windows XP Media Center Edition and Windows XP Tablet PC Edition, and security updates for .NET Framework version 1.0, which is included in these editions. However, it does not include update roll-ups for the Windows Media Center application in Windows XP MCE 2005. SP3 also omits security updates for Windows Media Player 10, although the player is included in Windows XP MCE 2005. The address bar desk band on the taskbar is no longer included due to legal restrictions. System requirements for Windows XP are as follows. Notes. Physical memory limits. The maximum amount of RAM that Windows XP can support varies depending on the product edition and the processor architecture, as shown in the following table. Processor limits. Windows XP Professional supports up to 2 physical processors. Windows XP Home Edition is limited to 1. Windows XP supports a greater number of logical processors. A logical processor is either 1. One of the 2 handlers of threads of instructions in one of the cores of a physical processor with support for hyper-threading present and enabled. Or 2. One of the cores of one of the physical processors without enabled support for hyper-threading. Windows XP 32-bit editions support up to 32 logical processors. 64-bit editions support up to 64 logical processors. Support life cycle. Support for Windows XP without a service pack ended on September 30, 2005. Windows XP Service Pack 1 and 1A were retired on October 10, 2006 and Windows XP Service Pack 2 reached end of support on July 13, 2010, almost 6 years after its general availability. The company stopped general licensing of Windows XP to OEMs and terminated retail sales of the operating system on June 30, 2008, 17 months after the release of Windows Vista. However, an exception was announced on April 3, 2008 for OEMs producing what it defined as ultra-low-cost personal computers, particularly netbooks, until 1 year after the availability of Windows 7. Analysts felt that the move was primarily intended to combat the threat of Linux-based netbooks, although Microsoft's Kevin Hutt stated that the decision was due to apparent market demand for low-end computers with Windows. Variants of Windows XP for embedded systems have different support policies. Windows XP Embedded SP3 will be supported until January 2016. Windows Embedded Standard 2009 and Windows Embedded POS Ready 2009 will be supported through January and April 2019, respectively. End of support. On April 14, 2009, Windows XP exited mainstream support and entered the extended support phase. Microsoft continued to provide security updates every month for Windows XP. However, free technical support, warranty claims, and design changes were no longer being offered. Extended support ended on April 8, 2014, over 12 years since the release of XP. Normally Microsoft products have a support life cycle of only 10 years. Beyond the final security updates released on April 8, no more security patches or support information will be provided for XP for free. Critical patches will still be created, and made available only to customers subscribing to a paid custom support plan. As it is a Windows component, all versions of Internet Explorer for Windows XP also became unsupported. Microsoft will continue to provide security essentials virus definitions and updates for its malicious software removal tool for XP until July 14, 2015, although in the case of MSAT, XP users will need to download the software from its website manually. As the end of extended support approached, Microsoft began to increasingly urge XP customers to migrate to newer versions such as Windows 7 or 8 in the interest of security, suggesting that attackers could reverse engineer security patches for newer versions of Windows and use them to target equivalent vulnerabilities in XP. On March 8, 2014, Microsoft deployed an update for XP that, on the 8th of each month, displays a pop-up notification to remind users about the end of support. These notifications may be disabled by the user. Microsoft also partnered with LaserLink to provide a special express version of its PCMover software to help users migrate files and settings from XP to a computer with a newer version of Windows. Despite the approaching end of support, there have still been notable holdouts who have not migrated past XP. Many users elected to remain on XP because of the poor reception of Windows Vista. Sales of newer PCs with newer versions of Windows declined due to the Great Recession and the effects of Vista, and deployments of new versions of Windows in enterprise environments require a large amount of planning, which includes testing applications for compatibility. Major security software vendors plan to continue offering support and definitions for Windows XP past the end of support to varying extents, along with the developers of Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and Opera web browsers. Despite these measures, critics similarly argued that users should eventually migrate from XP to a supported platform. As of January 2014, at least 49% of all computers in China still ran XP. These holdouts have been influenced by several factors. Prices of genuine copies of Windows in the country are high, while Ni Gongnan of the Chinese Academy of Sciences warned that Windows 8 could allegedly expose users to surveillance by the United States government, and the Chinese government would ban the purchase of Windows 8 products for government use in May 2014 in protest of Microsoft's inability to provide guaranteed support. The government also had concerns that the impending end of support could affect their anti-piracy initiatives with Microsoft, as users would simply pirate newer versions rather than purchasing them legally. As such, government officials formally requested that Microsoft extend the support period for XP for these reasons. While Microsoft did not comply with their requests, a number of major Chinese software developers, such as Lenovo, Kingsoft and Tencent, will provide free support and resources for Chinese users migrating from XP. Several governments, in particular the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, elected to negotiate custom support plans with Microsoft for their continued, internal use of Windows XP. The British government's deal lasts for a year, also covers support for Office 2003 and cost £5.5 million. In January 2014, it was estimated that more than 95% of the 3 million automated teller machines in the world were still running Windows XP. ATMs have an average life cycle of between 7 to 10 years, but some have had life cycles as long as 15. Plans were being made by several ATM vendors and their customers to migrate to Windows 7-based systems over the course of 2014, while vendors have also considered the possibility of using Linux-based platforms in the future to give them more flexibility for support life cycles. Similarly, specialized devices that run XP, particularly medical devices, must have any revisions to their software even security updates for the underlying operating system approved by relevant regulators before they can be released. For the same reason, manufacturers of medical devices had historically refused to provide, or even allow the installation of any Windows updates for these devices, leaving them open to security exploits and malware. On May 1, 2014, despite the end of support for the operating system, Microsoft released an emergency patch to correct a major, recently discovered security exploit in the Internet Explorer browser on all versions of Windows, including Windows XP. Peter Bright of Ars Technica called it a mistake and stated it will cause some users lose trust in their system administrators who told them that end of support means the end. Reception: on release, Windows XP received mostly positive reviews. CNET described the operating system as being worth the hype, considering the new interface to be spiffier and more intuitive than previous versions, but feeling that it may annoy experienced users with its hand-holding. XP's expanded multimedia support and CD burning functionality was also noted, along with its streamlined networking tools. The performance improvements of XP in comparison to 2000 and ME were also praised, along with its increased number of built-in device drivers in comparison to 2000. The software compatibility tools were also praised, although it was noted that some programs, particularly older MS-DOS software, may not work correctly on XP due to its differing architecture. Windows XP's new licensing model and product activation system was panned, considering it to be a slightly annoying roadblock, but acknowledged Microsoft's intent for the changes. PC Magazine provided similar praise, although noting that a number of its online features were designed to promote Microsoft-owned services, and that aside from quicker boot times, XP's overall performance showed little difference over Windows 2000. Market share: according to web analytics data generated by Net Applications, Windows XP was the most widely used operating system until August 2012, when Windows 7 overtook it. In January 2014, Net Applications reported a market share of 29.23% for XP, while W3 Schools reported a share of 11.0%. According to web analytics data generated by StatOwl, Windows XP has a 27.82% market share as of November 2012. having dropped to second place in October 2011. According to web analytics data generated by W3 Schools, from September 2003 to July 2011, Windows XP was the most widely used operating system for accessing the W3 Schools website, which they claim is consistent with statistics from other websites. As of May 2014, Windows XP market share is at 7.3% after having peaked at 76.1% in January 2007. According to Net Applications, Windows XP market share is of 25.27%, as of May 2014. See also: Comparison of operating systems, History of operating systems, List of operating systems, References. Further reading: Joyce, Jerry. Moon, Marianne. Microsoft Windows XP Plain and Simple. Microsoft Press. ISBN A978-0-7356-2112-1. Is Windows XP good enough? Microsoft. Retrieved May 6, 2014. A.